States is pushing for that. And it's not surprising that that's announced on the same day as a liberal leadership debate. Very interesting timing there. We're going to go deep on the liberal leadership debate because there's a lot of tabs, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Amish win against a tyrannical Canadian government with regards to COVID fines and liens against their homes. So that's good from the Democracy Fund. So excellent news there. Freeland wants a new world order. So she said that in the English debate yesterday. And she also rehashed the story talking about the 4-year-old she met that one time who's very politically savvy. Sure you did, Christia. Involuntary treatment centers from Danielle Smith. I am a fan of the idea of having institutions for people who are mentally unwell. I have no problem with like the idea of having that kind of support structure in place. I worked at children's treatment centers when I was younger. So I think having that infrastructure is good. I don't necessarily like the idea of involuntary commitment because I worry that they'll say, hey, you crazy anti-vaxxer or something like that. You crazy person who doesn't believe this government thing, even though all the scientists agree, you don't agree. So you're crazy. So we're going to use this legislature here that we've got for people who are drug addicts and a harm to themselves to put you into this institution and make you take this medicine that you don't want to take, right? Or this, whatever it is that you don't want to take. I worry about that. And I think that that's bad. I think that if you're in a situation where you've broken the law or you've harmed somebody or something like that, and not necessarily like, I don't want to make it to the point where you have to harm somebody in order to get into the institution. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it should be an alternative. It shouldn't necessarily be something like people abscond you and take you in. How did it work before? I don't know how it worked before. So anyway, I worry about that. And it's one of those things that preoccupies me, probably unnecessarily. Another premier steps down. So that's pretty interesting. We've got Fury from not Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador. And that's interesting because he seemed to be doing a good job. And he was just talking about the future a couple of weeks ago. He blames Trump. Another premier, Freeland wants a nuclear agreement against Trump. So she talks about recruiting Denmark to be a nuclear deterrent against Trump invading the country. Interesting. And I don't think she understands we're already in the fiscal configuration. James Comey is back in the news, and that's at the end of the show. And we're going to do our Trump stuff at the end of the news today. And how many people replied to Elon's email also at the end of the show. And peace breaks out in Ukraine. Of course, peace breaks out in Ukraine. And Justin Trudeau is still trying to stir the hornet's nest up. It's very interesting. He says, we're going to sanction Russia even more. Very interesting. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Daily Mail Online is reporting furious Zelensky screamed at Trump's envoy for trying to make him sign a $500 billion mineral deal, and was so loud that he could be heard through the door and left U.S. Treasury Secretary shaking. Like, I don't know, shaking like worried. They're like, sign it or you don't get the deal. You want me to call Obama right now? Call him. You don't get the deal. Fire the prosecutor. It's just the same as Biden. Anyway, I'm kidding. X Alert says breaking peace deal has been reached between Russia and Ukraine, and they're citing this one. Zelensky is flying to the USA to sign the deal made with President Trump. It's not finalized, but here are some key details. The United States will earn 50% of the future revenue from Ukraine's mineral wealth as repayment for the United States tax dollars spent on the war. Did we get any of that? Hi, we spent money on the war too. We're okay. Never mind. Sorry, we're asking. We're wondering. No membership to NATO. Ukraine was never going to join NATO. Right. That's always been a line in the sand for Russia and what started the war in the first place. Yep. No boots on the ground. Zelensky tried to backdoor NATO membership by placing U.S. or European troops on the ground in Ukraine. Instead, there will be a DMZ, a demilitarized zone. Ukraine concedes territory. Exactly how much is yet unknown, but Ukraine was never going to get all of its territory back and any more than they were going to join NATO. I haven't seen any concessions released by Russia yet, so get ready for more Putin puppet hoaxes. But the reality is Ukraine never had a chance against Russia. That was always certain. I always said, hey, did you know Russia is a nuclear power? I'm just saying, like, they're going to lose because they're a tiny little speck of a country. Biden started this war. Boris Johnson sabotaged a peace deal. Likely millions died and hundreds of billions of dollars were spent as a result. Trump ran on bringing peace to Ukraine. Promises made, promises kept. So that's true. Although I heard Trump talking, and he's talking about Trudeau later, and I'll show you that during the tariff section. But I saw him talking, and he was bragging about how he gave Ukraine some missiles, Striker missiles or stealth missiles or something like that. He said that was Raptor missiles. He said that was me. It wasn't Biden. It was me. And I was like, what? What is happening, man? Like, why? Why do you support Ukraine? I know. I understand. I'm just saying. I think it's funny how Trump, he also said Zelensky can fight on, like, so they can fight on, right? This is a partnership, so they can fight on. It's weird. Anyway, Salty Goat says, there it is. Peace deal reached between Russia and Ukraine, and Zelensky is flying to the United States to sign the deal made by President Trump. Details, Ukraine gets 50%, no NATO membership, Ukraine concedes territory. So that's the short version. This just made me laugh. I thought this was very, very funny. And this is like a text between Trump and Zelensky. It says, okay, I give you minerals. And Trump said, say it. But I already say I give you minerals. Say it. I'm a little bitch. Deal. I thought it was funny. I laughed out loud. Martyr, if you read it yourself, you'll hear it in his voice. Definitely. Okay, Martyr Mode is responding to The Spectator. The U.S. and Ukraine reached a deal on minerals and resources. For those keeping score, says Martyr Made, Ukraine lost 15% of its territory to its enemy, 50% of its minerals to its sponsor, and all it cost them was 20% of their population. This is what Professor Mearsheimer meant when he said, we're walking Ukraine down a primrose path. Yeah, well, I mean, but at least maybe the whole thing's done now. Right. And the whole thing was started in the first place by the neocons, Newland, and people who were trying to, in 2014, install their own leadership in Ukraine and in Crimea and other places, that area. And terrible things happened between 2014 and 2021 before this all went hot. And it's just incredible that, like, there are factions of the United States that did this. And they should be held accountable, right? Treason and all the rest. And we'll see if that actually happens. I don't know. But if they're not, that's bad, right? Like, that's not great. Justin Trudeau. So all of this peace deal stuff, this is a lot of people saying peace deal. Okay. This is 2:30 in the afternoon. Peace deals being announced. 3:30 in the afternoon. Other people announcing at 3:41. So by 6:30, when this tweet is posted, 6:39 p.m., Justin Trudeau should know what's going on, right? People were talking about the peace deal. He says, you know, we're going to do more sanctions for Russia. Russia funds its war on Ukraine with oil. To evade Western sanctions, Russia uses a shadow fleet of ships to illegally transport Russian oil to the world. In Kiev, I announced new sanctions on 109 oil tankers and vessels. We are cutting off Russia's war machine. Did anybody in the room say, the war's over? Peace has been negotiated. Hey, Justin, you sound like an idiot. No? Okay, weird, right? If he's in Kiev, it's even worse. Danielle Smith, going full Slava Ukraine, says the war in Kiev has taken countless lives, displaced millions, and left devastation in its wake. Alberta stands with the people of Ukraine and all those affected by this ongoing tragedy. There isn't a politician in Canada who's saying, you know what, we should focus on Canada first. Hopefully Ukrainians figure out their peace deal, and maybe we can get some of our money back from the loans that we sent them. But like, this, enough is enough. We've got potholes to deal with, right? Like nobody, everybody's doubling and tripling down on this. Is it just me that's frustrated and upset by this? Like, it's another country that we have absolutely no responsibility for. It's not in NATO. We don't even meet our NATO commitments. And we're saying Slava Ukraine? Come on. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. She continues. From the very beginning, Alberta has stepped up, welcoming thousands of displaced Ukrainians, providing them with the resources they need to rebuild their lives through housing supports, job opportunities, and community programs. We've done everything we can to ensure they feel safe and supported here in our province. We have also contributed millions in humanitarian aid, working with organizations to deliver food, medical supplies, and critical assistance to those still caught in the conflict. This war must end. The bloodshed and suffering and the destruction must stop. Alberta stands for peace, and we urge all world leaders, regardless of political stripe, to pursue an immediate resolution that restores security and stability to the region. The people of Ukraine deserve a future free from war. It's time for peace. Sure. I mean, have you read the news? But it's super interesting that the people of Ukraine deserve a future free from war. But Canada, just shut up and fund it. Like, weird. It's a weird situation to be in. I don't like it at all. Bill Blair says, since the start of Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, Canada has stood with the Ukrainian people. We remain unwavering in our commitment to continue providing Ukraine with critical military assistance to defend itself against Russia's brutal aggression. This is February 24th, so this is just before peace has broken out. But we're pledging unending support with no conditions forever and always to Ukraine. And NATO, listen, we'll get to 2% when we get to 2%. Stop bitching. Okay? Weird. It's a weird situation that doesn't make any sense, right? And you've got that cognitive dissonance. If we can afford to support Ukraine unendingly forever, then why can't we spend 2% of our GDP our NATO commitment? Why are we welching on, that's the word, right? Welching on this one commitment and totally overdoing it on this other one, right? It's like that part in Love Actually where he buys that gift for his wife and she's seen it, but she doesn't get it on Christmas Day, right? Like it's like somebody knows something's up, right? Moving on. 222 minutes. Let's talk about tariffs and Donald Trump. He says, I like memes. I think these memes are kind of fun. And so you've got a Uno card. It says, fix the border and crack down on fentanyl or draw 25% tariffs. And Canada chooses all the tariffs, right? We're choosing all the tariffs, Mr. Speaker. Unbelievable stuff happening. Zachary says, let's recap just this last month. February 12th, all of Canada's 13 premiers go down to Washington to try and meet with Trump, who only sends a staffer. February 20th, the premier of PEI resigns. February 25th, the premier of Newfoundland resigns. So I've got that news for you right here. Globe and Mail's reporting Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey says he's stepping down. So there you go. He's stepped down, and that's interesting, right? So seems pretty crazy. Are you awake yet, Canada? It seems like people are not. It seems like people are ignoring what's going on. Here's Danielle Smith responding to Donald Trump. Yesterday, I showed you that Donald Trump was like, whatever happened to that XL Keystone pipeline? We'd love to build the Keystone XL. And Danielle Smith says, agreed, President Trump. That project should have never been canceled. Lower fuel costs for American families is a big win. Let's also scrap these inflationary tariff ideas and focus on getting shovels in the ground right away. So yes, let's build pipelines, not tariffs, right? That'd be a good campaign slogan. And again, it's just kind of strange that that we've got so much enthusiasm for certain things, but then when the real governance stuff goes, we've got Slava Ukraine left and right? Like on some things, Danielle Smith seems right on, and other things, it's like what, why are we wasting our time on this? Here is how the CBC is portraying, well, Andy Lee is sharing this, and it says on CBC right now, how to talk to kids about Trump. And I thought to myself, what does this crazy leftist looking lady have to do with Trump? And then I read the headline, like the little bumper at the bottom of the screen, and it says how to talk to kids about Trump, tariffs, and Canadian sovereignty. And it's this angry looking woman with, like, instead of changing her hair color, she's got very, very bright glasses. It's like the orange or the blue. It's like somebody who would prefer to dye their hair blue, but instead just got their glasses blue. Anyway, she's very angry, this Jennifer Williams social studies teacher, I think. And this is not how to talk to Trump or to anybody about Trump and tariffs and things like that. I bet it'd be funny though. The segment would probably, like if you were Trump and you watch that Canadian produced anger segment on how to talk to kids about Trump, it would be funny, like for you, right? But for anybody else, it's just a waste of money. Laurie Goldstein says University of Calgary economist Trevor Tombe says, quote, real GDP per capita in the United States was 43% higher than in Canada in 2023. In 2024, I estimate this gap will widen to nearly 50%. This stunning divergence is unprecedented in modern history. Justin Trudeau has put on a carbon tax, and this has prevented our ability to enrich ourselves using our products. And so our productivity was capped at the year the carbon tax came in, and we haven't been able to innovate through the carbon tax to continue that productivity. And so we are losing ground every year to the United States, who has not done this. And you're stymieing yourself economically. It's like running a marathon, but on purpose chopping off the bottom half of your right leg and then running the marathon. You're not going to do as well. Okay. And so we did that with the carbon tax. And now this is the result. And now people are saying, oh yeah, Canada's economy is weak and we're going to get stronger again. The only way we can get stronger is by putting that leg back on, right? Is by undoing all of those bad policies that are hamstringing us and then trying to play catch up. But it's going to take time to play catch up, right? So all of those bad policies have a negative fiscal impact. And that negative fiscal impact is actually making us ripe for the picking for Trump. Like he could just come in and take us. And we wouldn't even complain because it's going to feel so freeing, right? Like, holy cow. So yeah, that's not good. It's not good. Table Salt says, breaking, Trump says a lot of Canadians want to join the United States. Here is this. This is Vasi Kapoulas. She comes back on to do some damage control at the end, which is kind of funny. Here we go.
this hour from the White House, where President Donald Trump was just asked about his so-called 51st state threats. Listen to this.
They told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make a lot of things, including the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be...
Just a tiny fact check there. Most recent polling shows about 7 in 10 Canadians are, in fact, not open to the idea of joining the United States.
I don't believe Vassy there. I don't believe that at all. Here is, hold on, I have a different one. Here is a Free Press article from Rupa, and I just thought this was hilarious. It says, the Canadians who say, Trump, take my country, please. More than 10% of Canadians want the new president to make good on... How come president's not capitalized here? Ooh, poor. To make good on his troll. Rupa meets the people sick of life under Trudeau. And so she implied, and this is in December 2024, I think this was written. That's the date on it here, it says. But the implication is that 7 in 10 people in Canada don't want to join the United States. And I think that number is not correct. And I'm not saying that, 50% of people want to join or anything like that. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the number was that high. I have no idea what the number might actually be. But just in my own kind of circle, there are a lot of people who, if you mention this, it doesn't get them, feverishly pro-Canadian. It doesn't get them angry that Trump is even suggesting this. They're like, well, yeah, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole bunch of things that have happened in the economic world that are absolutely bonkers. So this next step is not offending anybody as far as I can tell. And there are people who are looking at it pro, looking at it con. We still haven't had a debate, pros and cons, about this whole thing. Nobody's really talking about this as if it's a real thing. And so that's interesting to me. In this article, there's some highlights here. It says, she says, I spoke to a dozen Canadians who said they were ready to pay fealty to Uncle Sam, bending the knee, right? Barbara Murphy, 75, who lives on a farm in Milton, Ontario, and runs a property business, was one of them. I wouldn't fight for Canada because no one fights for Canada. Canadians are kept people, Murphy said. They have no idea who they are. Murphy agrees with Trudeau, who famously said that Canada is the world's first post-national state with no core identity. I don't agree with that, but anyway. We don't celebrate our culture like Americans because we're embarrassed by it, she said. We don't celebrate our culture right now, but we used to. My grandchildren, she said, would have far more opportunity than they do in this country. My 16-year-old grandson can't get an entry-level job at a Tim Hortons, Murphy said, referring to Canada's ubiquitous coffee chain, right? American-owned now, by the way. So it's interesting there, and I think the sentiment is that's quite usual. Here's another one, Taylor Simone, 32. So that's older. Here's a younger, an adult, right? Taylor Simone, 32, a film and television professional from Vancouver who makes ends meet working as a server and manager at a restaurant, agrees if Canada were to become the 51st state, I wouldn't protest it too much. She told me, if I had the economic ability to buy a house in Canada, I would never have come to this point. So the policies that the government has pushed that have made this person unable to afford a house in Canada have pushed her to say, meh, like, what am I fighting for? Like, what does Canada represent anyway? At least this way, I'll have an identity I can understand that isn't Chinese, right? Like, interesting. It's interesting to me. Here is Daisy Media. He's back, and he says, Canadian representatives are on Capitol Hill trying to lure American lawmakers with friendship bracelets and pizza, but mainly with pizza. This is an embarrassment, and so is CBC's coverage of it. Do you still think Canada is a serious country? Here is, like, honestly, he's 100% right. This is embarrassing, and it's weird. It's a weird way to frame all of this. It's very infantilizing. If you're an adult, like, you can buy your own damn pizza. Like, you don't need a pizza party, right? Like, it's weird. Here we go.
With a number of different things, they're going to try to lure them in mainly with pizza. We are inside sort of the foyer of one of the busiest office buildings on Capitol Hill, and this is where Canada is going to try and lure in lawmakers, American lawmakers, and their staffers with a number of different things. They're going to try to lure them in mainly with pizza, and then once they get in here, try to ram into them as much information they can about the importance of the Canada trading relationship.
They know. I think that Canada doesn't understand the game the United States is playing and how we fit into it, right? Oh, here's the tweet that goes with Rupa's thing. She says, when I sent out a call in December on X looking to speak to Canadians who want Canada to become the 51st state, my inbox flooded with responses. And as a politician, you need to understand why there's so much support. So on one hand, Vassie's saying 7 in 10 don't want anything to do with being a part of the United States. And on the other hand, an anecdotal story says there's massive support. And I mean, anecdotally, from what I see, massive support. So although I've seen people on X who get hyper patriotic about Canada and this whole thing, and I can't understand what they're patriotic about. I honestly can't understand it, because it's not like we have good governance. It's not like we have a good system. It's not like we have people in that system who are really stand out and really, they're doing great work. They're just tearing down barriers and really helping people, and it's not happening. Like, the government hates us, and the government's stealing our money, and the government would kick sand in our face if they could. You know what I mean? Like, they hate us. They hate everything about Canadians. They hate our skin color. They hate everything about us. And so, like, I don't understand what these people see that they're wanting to protect, right? 10, 15 years ago, I could see what we were kind of all pulling for. We were all pulling together in a direction of a better future, right? But now there is absolutely no core ideal or anything that's being pushed about our country except, buy Canada because mean man Trump. Like, come on. And then I'm not getting on board with any of that, because it's crap. It's absolute nonsense. We have a rich country with bad fiscal management, bad policies, and people who hate the country and its people in charge. And it's a strange, and then they like the richness of the country and they don't want anybody to interrupt their grift. So they have to pretend like they like the people of the country periodically, right? And they have to pretend super hard right now because we're questioning it. Economic woes, says Bank of Canada's governor just told us our house prices are destined for depression with the looming tariffs. This is 4 minutes. It's worth all of it. Like, you should probably go watch all of it if you're interested. Links in the description. But we're just going to listen to the first minute. He sets it up, right? He sets it up, maybe minute and 20. Anyway, here we go.
The economic consequences of a protracted trade conflict would be severe. But it would be very different, a very different shock than the COVID-19 shock. In the pandemic, we had a steep recession followed by a rapid recovery as the economy reopened. This time, if tariffs are long-lasting and broad-based, there won't be a bounce back. We may eventually regain our current rate of growth, but the level of output will be permanently lower. It's more than a shock. It's a structural change. The first thing we would see is a marked decline in exports. As Canadian goods become more expensive, U.S. demand for those goods would decline. A lower Canadian dollar would provide a partial offset. In our model, with the scenario based on the February 1 executive order, exports fall by about 8.5% in the year after tariffs takes effect. That's the green line. Canadian exporters respond by cutting production and laying off workers. With exports to the United States accounting for roughly 1/4 of our national income, the shock will be felt across Canada.
Okay, and so there's more. There's 2 minutes more, and it's all worthwhile. So unfortunate, and I hope that he's wrong. But all of that, what did Trump say? Are you going to use the military? No, economic force. What is economic force? Exactly what not the food professor, Tiff Macklem there is laying out, right? And that's exactly what he said he was going to do. And are you surprised? Why does the Canadian government seem surprised? They sat there and laughed as he was saying Trump was laying out what he was going to do. And they said, oh, he's trolling, he's laughing, he's funny, ha ha ha. And nobody took him seriously. And they should have, because maybe they would have been prepared for this or had an idea of what to do about this. But still, they're not doing anything about this, really. Not really. Right? It's very interesting. If you think that Mark Carney's teeth are better, by the way, we have to do leadership. And so the leadership race is ridiculous. And it's a way to take control of the conversation. It's a way to focus on liberals and their policies instead of looking at their failures and watching the government fall. This is a way to reset the conversation, and they've turned the polls, but that's all rigged too, to say that Pierre Poilievre is going to lose and the liberals are on track for a majority. For real, that's what the polls say. Unbelievable, right? But here is why I think Mark Carney is just completely unelectable. The guy has teeth that are rotting out of his head. If I had the money of this guy, I'd buy a new set of teeth. Like, holy smokeronies. Here he is with a Hillary Clinton looking woman, and look at his teeth. I can't even look at his teeth because they're terrible. They're so terrible. You have money, man. Like, it doesn't even cost that much. Get some whitening strips or something, for crying out loud. I thought he had his teeth fixed, and I thought also that he stopped smiling, like open mouth. So he's like, right? Nope and nope. So unfortunately for all of us. Here is Dimitri. He says, White House officials push to axe Canada from the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network. Peter Navarro has advocated the move to put more pressure on Canada. So things are the pressure they can put on Canada, but it's been years in the making. Like, I've been hearing rumors about Canada's, well, Ortiz, the second in command of CSIS, was leaking Five Eyes secrets to China. And that's in our courts and things like that right now. And so I'm not surprised, but it's not surprising that this is coming out when it's coming out. Not to mention, and this guy, Mark here, highlights this as well. He says, not even Canadians can begin to understand what Canada really is. We're a criminal asylum. We're not hockey and beer innocent. We're human trafficking, huge meth labs everywhere, murderers freely roaming the streets. Yes, there's certainly a change that's happened since the early 2000s in Canada. And I think it was better hidden then. Because the scale, I think, wasn't as massive. And then the criminals took over the government, turned a blind eye, and they were able to operate with impunity. And now Trump's taking out the trash. And the pressure that we're seeing put on Canada is because of all of this stuff. China's in control, turning our judiciary, we're turning a blind eye. And I mean, Trump's got things to clean up in his country too, but he seems to be doing that too. Maybe. John says USA wants Canada out of Five Eyes intelligence agency because of Canadian government corruption and its ties to organized crime. Well, how does that sit with all of you CBC listeners? You won't hear that on there. That's true. You'll hear about pizza parties. Weird, right? Here's Andy Lee. She says intelligence is not evidence until we get kicked out of the Five Eyes. And she's going back to September 5th, 2023. She says, in unrelated news, United Front groups in Canada plan Arctic expedition to Tuktoyaktuk, complete with off-road vehicles, guns, and professional photographers. Tuktoyaktuk has been identified as a strategic weakness in our Arctic defense. The hamlet is described as important. So, but everything's fine. Just carry on as we are. There's nothing. The real problem here is Trump. Okay. Mike Belcher. Belcher is a wonderful last name, and you could become a legend with just the last name Belcher. Anyway, Belcher says, if we're successful in righting this ship, the United States, the greatest security threat of the next decade is going to be the Western, quote, allies who have failed at the same task and now represent a beachhead of communist subversion aimed squarely at America and with direct access to our intelligence agencies, products, and significant personal relationships to U.S.-based elites. So they're removing that threat in Canada now. We're already seen as a threat, and they're shoring up their protection against the threat, their perceived threat. And what do they do with Canada? Right? How do they free not just us, but the rest of the allies who are also communist beachheads? And the UK is just looking at what Keir Starmer's doing, right? How does Trump pressure that? And Canada's a relatively easy fix, more easy than the United Kingdom or other places that you can't just turn into the 52nd state. You know what I mean? We're just going to do American hedge money, and I'm going to never leave, says Trump, and that's not a solution either. So I think transparency is the solution, but where's that Epstein list? Gosh darn it. Okay, Naya says, are you missing the forest from the trees? The United States does not leak out that Canada may be removed from the Five Eyes Security Alliance on the very same day as the English language debate of the Liberal leadership because of the previous 10 years of Justin Trudeau. Yeah. It's a strategic thing. Like, they're using this to put pressure on Canada, pressure on the Liberals, pressure to use this leadership debate as something that is not going to bolster them, but is going to harm them, maybe. Raquel Dancho says, violent crime wasn't mentioned once by any Liberal leadership candidate during a 2-hour debate. Violent crime has surged 50% under 10 years of Liberal government. None of these Liberals will repeal their devastating soft-on-crime policies, harming Canadians every single day. That's true. Here's Melissa Lantsman saying the same thing. She says, if you're watching the Liberal debate a full hour in, wondering why no one is talking about immigration, fentanyl, borders, bail, the enormous size of government, it's because they're responsible for the disaster they've caused. This is a town hall meeting of ignoring the last 9 years of chaos. And they're all campaigning as if the people who did all of the bad policies that we all hate was some other party. But it wasn't. It was their party, right? Like, it's insane. Andrew Scheer says Carney was caught lying. Carney tonight, when asked about the Brooksfield moving to New York, said, I was chair of Brooksfield Asset Management. I ceased to be chair on the 15th of January when I announced for leadership. The formal decision of the board happened after I ceased to be on the board. I do not have a connection with Brookfield Asset Management. The truth is the decision was made on October 31st of 24 and reported on November 1st of 24. Mark Carney is caught lying to Canadians again. As chair of Brookfield, Mark Carney chose to move jobs out of Canada and into Trump's hometown. Trump wants our jobs, and Mark Carney is just the man to help him. If Carney wins, Canada loses. So it's interesting that the pivot is to attack Mark Carney instead of putting together, we're going to open up government and we're going to look into every single line of spending, every line, and we're going to find out where it's all going, and we're going to cut out the NGOs, and we're going to stop spending money on foreign wars. Like, nobody's saying any of that. He's like, Mark Carney's the bad guy. Choose us and we'll get that bad guy, Mark Carney. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. Like, all I want is the bad guys to go to prison. All I want is for transparency and us to be able to follow the paper trail and have somebody at the end of that paper trail, like Matlock or Columbo or Murder, She Wrote, right? Like, somebody to wrap it up into a nice little package and say, you're going to jail, buddy. You're responsible for this and you're going to jail. That's what I want. I don't want, it doesn't have to be flashy, right? Like, you don't have to wine and dine me. Just put the bad guys in jail. Pierre Poilievre says Mark Carney started advising Justin Trudeau on the economy 5 years ago. Here's what he says about his own record in that role. He's talking here about how the economy was weak before Trump threatened tariffs. Yes, they weakened the economy on purpose to hand us over to communists. Here's Mark Carney on that.
I want to be clear, and Canadians feel this. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Mm-hmm. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration that is now trying to be controlled, and
he doesn't mention anything about what he's doing there.
Government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump.
We could release the Epstein list. We could release the Diddy list. We could do all those things. Michelle Ferrier says, you can't make this up. Mark Carney was the top economic advisor to Trudeau for the last 5 years. Does he think Canadians are stupid, or does he really not understand that he destroyed the economy? He hopes that Canadians don't understand that he destroyed the economy. Mark Carney is openly musing about eliminating provincial jurisdiction. This is the only way he could do what he's proposing to do. This is not the first time he's said this, and it will destroy Canada. Maybe. The excuse is to tear down the trade barriers, but keep that supply management intact. Weird. Rex Glacier is responding to Mark Carney on climate. Carney says, on climate, Poilievre doesn't get it, and Rex says, that's right. Business gets more competitive when they pay carbon taxes. When did Carney get this stupid to believe a billionaire in a suit telling us this? Or when did Canadians get this stupid to believe a billionaire in a suit telling us this? So don't believe your experience. Believe what I tell you. Sure. Here is Chrystia Freeland's story about talking to a 4-year-old about politics and Trump. I wish I were lying, but nope, it's true. Here we go.
A few weeks ago in Saskatoon, I met a 4-year-old girl named Ari. She asked me, can you stop Trump from invading Canada? Ari is a smart girl, and she's asking the right question. I'm running to be leader of the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada because Trump is posing the gravest challenge our country has faced since the Second World War.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Here is Tokyo Rosie, and she says, no twitchy, referring to Freeland. The greatest threat to Canada since World War II is not Donald Trump. The greatest threat to Canada right now are Marxist a-holes masquerading as liberals ready to turn us into Cuba North. True. This is a 45-second workup of the debate, and I think it kind of sums it up well. Here it is. Basically, it says, if Donald Trump and the United States are the biggest threat to our Canadian leadership since the Second World War, what does that say about our Canadian leadership, right? Who was adversaries in the Second World War? Who's adversaries now? I think it's the same people, and I think the people on Canada's side are the people who starved the kulaks. Here we go.
Winner of last night's debate, Donald Trump and America. The entire debate was based on Donald Trump. That's how little either of them have to offer to Canada. Petty scare tactics and doomsday scenarios galore, just because of 25% tariffs. Trump is the greatest threat since World War II. What does that say about Canada and its present and past governments? We have been weakened by our voting. We have been weakened by our own government. Canadian government needed Trump to pass the blame for their own massive failures running our country. Donald Trump is not our enemy, our government is.
I think that's it. I think that's the tweet, right? And accurate. Alexandra Lavoie says, Chrystia Freeland says we need to build a new world order with our allies to protect Canada and Canada's sovereignty from Trump. So she talks about going to Denmark and France and England because they have nuclear power, and we want to use that against Trump to protect Canada. I think making the statement, we want to use nuclear-powered nations to protect ourselves against Trump, may actually make Trump respond faster. Here's Chrystia Freeland talking about a new world order. Here we go.
We need to recognize President Trump has said dozens of times he wants us to be the 51st state. I don't think any of us wants to be the leader who was asleep at the wheel and didn't get Canada defended, did not work with our democratic allies to protect our borders. They want to work with us. It's time for us to step up at home, to urgently reach out to them and build a new world order where democracy and Canadian sovereignty is protected. We need to recognize President...
Crazy stuff, right? That's pretty crazy. Here's another one, nuclear war. Here we go.
The U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that. That's why I would start with our Nordic partners, specifically Denmark, which is also being threatened, and our European NATO allies. I would be sure that France and Britain were there, who possess nuclear weapons, and I would be working urgently with those partners to build a closer security relationship that guarantees our security in a time when the United States can be a threat.
So we'll have all these eyes. It'll be Canada and France and Denmark and England, and we can call it the Four Eyes. Okay, we'll do that. Thanks, Chrystia. That's a great idea. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We'll use nuclear weapons. Do you think that Donald Trump would tolerate a nuclear China on its northern border? I don't think so. They would not tolerate that. That's not happening, right? So it's a situation where I think that if that's on the table for Canada, then Donald Trump is going to move faster for whatever he was going to do. And I'm not saying that it's completely economically painless for us, like for the citizens of Canada. I'm not saying, oh, great, it's going to be wonderful. I'm saying, like, one, our idiot leaders keep threatening this and notching this up or ratcheting this up every time they have a microphone in front of them. And two, if they piss off Donald Trump, it seems like he has the wherewithal and ability to make things happen. Gov.exe says, Karina Gould says we're at a crisis because we are having a hard time paying the bills, buying food or gas, and it's because of Donald Trump. Do these people know how dumb they sound? Trump has been president for 6 weeks. They've been in power for 10 years. Yeah, I don't want to listen to Karina Gould. We've already listened to enough liberals today. Sheila Gunreed from Rebel says, I like how they're all pretending that Frank Bayless didn't rip us off for $237 million in the sole source ventilator contract. Yep. And Mind Over Chatter says, I like how they're all pretending Mark Carney didn't hang out with Ghislaine Maxwell at a hedonist festival. When asked about it, he said he was with her because she was a close friend of his sister-in-law. That doesn't answer the question. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful